With a straight stick, with a little fucked up stick. I whack the ball that goes in a gopher hole.
Oh, you mean like croquet?
Fuck croquet!
Why did the man who made the whole world laugh end up dying in terror, whispering to himself in the dark? Before Robin Williams took his final breath, he was no longer the brilliant comedian the world knew. He was a man haunted by shadows he couldn't name, hallucinations he couldn't escape, and a mind that betrayed him piece by piece. His death in 2014 was reported as a tragic suicide. But what most people didn't know, what even some of his closest friends didn't understand, was that the man who gave joy to millions had been silently consumed by a rare neurological monster. The headlines rushed to blame depression, marital troubles, fading fame. They painted him as another celebrity unable to cope. But the truth, the horrifying, heartbreaking truth, only emerged later. Robin wasn't simply depressed. He was dying in the most cruel way imaginable, losing his memories, his grasp on reality, his very self. It wasn't just sadness, it was Lewy body dementia, a degenerative brain disease that doctors failed to recognize until after the autopsy. He knew something was wrong. He felt his mind slipping. He confessed to friends that he was scared, that there's something inside me that's just not right. But he kept performing, kept smiling, kept cracking jokes through the cracks of his own crumbling sanity. This is not just the story of a beloved actor. It's the story of a man whose greatest role might have been hiding the terror that consumed him. And in the end, it wasn't the spotlight that killed Robin Williams. It was what waited in the dark when the curtain fell. Robin Williams was more than just a household name. He was a cultural force. Born in Chicago in 1951, raised in the affluence of suburban Michigan, he was a shy child who found refuge in voices and characters. That shy boy would become the fastest mind in comedy, a human fireworks display of wit, heart, and unpredictability. For over 4 decades, Williams was the man who could improvise Shakespeare as a robot, or turn a classroom into a revolution with a whisper of carpe diem. His rise coincided with a changing America. From the post-Vietnam malaise of the late 1970s to the escapist optimism of the 1990s, Robin Williams wasn't just reacting to culture. He was shaping it. As Mork from Ork in Mork and Mindy, he introduced a kind of electric absurdity that felt like a remedy to the disillusioned generation that watched him. As a stand-up comic, his shows weren't routines. They were detonations. Live-wire performances where words spilled faster than thought, and the audience often laughed in stunned disbelief. Then came the films. Good Morning Vietnam redefined what comedy could do with war. Dead Poet Society taught a generation to dream dangerously. Mrs. Doubtfire made a joke out of pain, and Good Will Hunting gave him his Oscar for not being funny. That was the trick. Beneath the frenzy was depth. He didn't play characters, he embodied contradictions, tender but manic, childlike but tragic, effortlessly funny but deeply broken. Hollywood adored him, but Hollywood also used him. They leaned on the mania, the fire, the chaos. Few saw the cost. Privately, Robin fought demons. He battled addiction throughout his career, cocaine in the early years, then alcohol in the shadows of his success. But the real danger wasn't just chemical, it was internal. His brain was beginning to betray him long before anyone understood. By the early 2010s, something had changed. He was still working, The Crazy Ones, a sitcom meant to revive his television glory, but the spark was dimmer. Colleagues noticed he would forget lines. His improvisations were slower. His eyes, once constantly searching for a punchline, now often seemed confused. At home, he grew paranoid. He told his wife someone was stealing things from the house. He believed he had a terminal illness. He feared he was losing his mind, and he was right. Doctors diagnosed him with Parkinson's disease. It explained the tremors, the stiffness, but it didn't explain the hallucinations, the terror, the mental fog. And it certainly didn't explain why Robin Williams, a man who had survived addiction, fame, failure, and heartbreak, was now unraveling at the very core of his being. He was a man at war with a silent invader, and the world kept asking him to smile. The truth, that he had Lewy body dementia, a vicious neurological disorder that mimics Parkinson's while stripping away identity and sanity, wasn't discovered until it was too late, until after the funeral, until after the headlines. By then, the narrative had been written. Depression killed a comedian. But it wasn't depression. It was something far darker, and it had already begun to dismantle him, even as the world kept watching and laughing. The rise of Robin Williams wasn't just meteoric, it was elemental, as if comedy had found a new physical form in a man who couldn't sit still, couldn't stop talking, and couldn't stop feeling everything more intensely than the rest of us. His beginnings in the world of stand-up were explosive. He didn't tell jokes, he performed mental exorcisms, channeling dozens of voices, impressions, and characters in a single breathless set. He was chaos, precision, madness, and genius, all in one body that seemed incapable of staying within itself. Hollywood took notice fast. Mork and Mindy, launched in 1978, catapulted him into global fame. It wasn't just a sitcom, it was a showcase. Week after week, Robin defied the written page, going off-script with wild riffs that left his co-stars scrambling and audiences stunned. He was branded a comic supernova, but what no one saw was that behind the laughter was an engine running dangerously hot. With success came excess. Cocaine became his companion, not for thrill, but to keep up. To silence the crashing wave of thoughts and insecurities that plagued him when the spotlight dimmed. Cocaine is God's way of telling you you're making too much money, he joked. But behind that punchline was a truth. Robin was speeding toward a wall. The death of his close friend John Belushi in 1982, of a drug overdose, shook him deeply. Robin had partied with Belushi just hours before his death. That moment marked a turning point. He quit cocaine cold turkey. He married, had a son, tried to settle. For a while, he did. Then came his golden period in cinema. Good Morning Vietnam, Dead Poets Society, The Fisher King, Aladdin, Mrs. Doubtfire. He was no longer just a comedian, he was a storyteller, a soul-bearer. Hollywood gave him the roles it didn't trust anyone else to play. Complex, layered men hiding pain beneath wit. And Robin delivered, every time. But with each performance, the line between character and man blurred. He said once, "I think the saddest people always try their hardest to make people happy because they know what it feels like to feel absolutely worthless." That wasn't a line from a movie. That was him. That was the weight he carried into every room. In the early 2000s, the storm quietly returned. After 20 years sober, he relapsed into alcoholism. The comedy tours resumed, but this time they seemed less manic, more haunted. He entered rehab again. Fans noticed he looked thinner, older, tired. Still, he pressed on. He voiced characters, took on supporting roles, returned to television, but the magic didn't sparkle like before. He stumbled over lines, forgot blocking. Scenes had to be reshot. Directors whispered, co-stars wondered, but no one said it aloud. Then came The Crazy Ones in 2013, a TV comeback that seemed promising. But ratings slipped. The energy wasn't there. The fire was flickering. Robin, once the fastest mind in the room, was now pausing mid-sentence, unsure of where he was in the script. Privately, he was unraveling. He grew paranoid, believed his wife was hiding things from him, became convinced he had a terminal illness, though doctors couldn't find anything definitive. His hands trembled. He couldn't sleep. Nightmares, confusion, hallucinations. Still, he smiled through interviews. Still, he performed. But the terror was mounting. In May 2014, he checked himself into a neurocognitive testing center. No answers came. In July, The Crazy Ones was canceled. In August, Robin Williams was dead. To the world, it looked like a tragic ending to a sad decline. But no one knew the truth yet. That the mind of Robin Williams, the greatest comic of his generation, had been under siege by something far more merciless than depression. A truth that would only be revealed after it was too late. The world awoke on August 11, 2014, to the kind of headline no one wanted to believe. Robin Williams dead at 63, apparent suicide. Shock rippled across the globe. Tributes flooded in from fans, friends, and fellow artists. The man who had made millions laugh was gone. The cause, everyone assumed, was depression. They weren't entirely wrong, but they weren't right either. At first, it was easy to build the narrative. A fading star, a canceled show, a history of addiction, marital troubles. Maybe he was lonely. Maybe he felt washed up. It all seemed to fit. But the truth, when it came, didn't fit into any of those boxes. The truth was horrifying in its cruelty and devastating in its timing. Robin Williams had been dying from Lewy body dementia, and nobody knew. Lewy body dementia is one of the most aggressive and misunderstood neurological diseases known to medicine. It robs the victim of memory, clarity, and motor function. It mimics Parkinson's in the body and Alzheimer's in the mind, then adds hallucinations, paranoia, and terrifying delusions. And worst of all, the patient often knows it. That's the part that broke Robin. He told his wife, Susan Schneider, that he felt like he was losing his mind. He couldn't control his anxiety. He couldn't remember lines on set. He would cry without knowing why. He was convinced he had a tumor. He was afraid of being institutionalized. And in the final weeks, he became tormented by vivid hallucinations. People who weren't there, objects moving on their own, sounds that had no source. Every night was a battle. Every morning, a curse. Doctors had misdiagnosed him with Parkinson's. They treated the symptoms, but the disease was far more advanced than anyone guessed. It wasn't until the autopsy that the truth came out. Robin's brain was ravaged. The doctor said it was one of the worst cases of LBD they had ever seen. His wife later said he experienced nearly all of the 40-plus symptoms of LBD, except one. He never forgot who I was. That line pierced through the global fog of speculation. This wasn't suicide from sadness. This was escape from a prison collapsing inward. A decision made not out of despair, but desperation. The media scrambled to reframe the story, but by then, the damage had been done. The headlines had already told millions. Robin Williams gave up. But that wasn't true. Robin Williams fought harder than anyone ever knew. He acted, joked, performed, while his brain crumbled underneath him. And he kept going, until he couldn't anymore. Behind the scenes, friends recalled moments that now seemed drenched in tragedy. Billy Crystal shared that their final conversation ended with Robin whispering, "Good night, my friend. My love to you and your family. Good night." It sounded like a farewell, but no one could see it then. The emotional peak came not with his death, but with the revelations that followed. When the truth surfaced, it cast his entire final year in a haunting new light. The confusion, the fear, the canceled shows, the silence. It wasn't weakness, it was war. And the world, so busy grieving the clown, finally saw the man. Robin Williams didn't die of depression. He died from a disease that stole everything except his ability to love. And now, years later, that love, imperfect, messy, incandescent, remains. He was still smiling, even as the lights dimmed and the room went quiet. Robin Williams was never just a comedian. He was a mirror, reflecting both the absurdity and fragility of being human. In the eyes of Aussie Uncovered, Legends and Secrets, he stands not as a tragic cautionary tale, but as a symbol of the emotional duality that defines so many great artists. The ones who give the most often carry the heaviest burdens. It's tempting, even easy, to remember Robin as the hyperactive clown, the lovable goofball, the whirlwind of impressions and voices. But that would be to flatten him, to rob him of the depth he so often gave to others. Because beneath the laughter was a man trying to survive his own mind, a man who knew the price of giving joy and paid it in private agony. He fought to stay present, even as the walls closed in. He continued to work. He tried medication, therapy, support groups. He did not isolate. He did not withdraw from love. In fact, he clung to it. In his final months, he walked through the storm not with resignation, but with determination, desperate to find answers, to hold on to the fragments of himself that were slipping away. It's easy to misread silence as surrender. But Robin Williams didn't surrender. He endured. And in the end, when the suffering became something no one around him could understand, he made a final decision, not as a quitter, but as a man facing an unthinkable enemy with no roadmap, no cure, and no end in sight. Legends and Secrets believes this is where the public must shift its lens. This wasn't a man who lost to depression. This was a man erased by a disease even doctors struggle to identify. His death is not a footnote to his legacy. It is a brutal reminder of how little we still understand about mental and neurological health. And yet, Robin's light didn't die with him. It flickers on every time a child laughs at Aladdin or someone cries watching Dead Poets Society. Every improv stage that encourages chaos, every comic who breaks silence with truth, owes something to him. His performances weren't perfect, they were human, and that is why they last. In a world that demands constant joy, Robin Williams showed us the cost of being the source of that joy. And he showed us something even braver, that it's okay to struggle, even when you're everyone's hero. So what about you? What did Robin Williams mean to you? Was he the genie, the teacher, the father in disguise, the friend you never met? Do you remember the first time he made you laugh or the first time he made you cry? Tell us, because maybe, just maybe, the best way to honor a man who gave so much is to finally, truly see him. Some stories never get told, but now, you know. Now you know that behind the wild eyes and rubbery grin, there was a man grappling with the slow erosion of his mind. That the one who made us laugh until we cried was, all along, crying on the inside, terrified, confused, and alone in ways no camera ever caught. Robin Williams didn't just perform characters, he gave them pieces of himself, sometimes too many. He lent his voice to the voiceless, his energy to the weary, and his hope to those who'd lost theirs. And somehow, he did all that while quietly watching the walls of his own reality fall inward. When we remember him now, it's easy to feel the sting of loss. But there's something else, something more powerful, left in his wake: presence. Every time we whisper, "Oh, Captain, my Captain," or hear the genie laugh, or see a teacher stand for his students, or feel that ache of joy wrapped in pain, Robin is there, in the air, in the silence after the laughter. He didn't leave behind a legacy. He left behind a feeling, a reminder that the brightest lights often burn from the darkest fuel, that behind every joke might be a secret, and that kindness, true kindness, can live even inside a broken heart. He is missed, not just for the performances, but for the soul behind them. So the next time you laugh unexpectedly or tear up at a memory you didn't realize still hurt, maybe that's Robin, reminding you that even in chaos there's beauty. The curtain fell, but the echo still lingers.